Okay. Good evening and welcome. Today is Tuesday, October 22nd, 2019. It is 6 p.m. We're in the city chambers and I call the City Commission regular meeting to order. Those present with me are Commissioner Luke, Vice Mayor McDowell, myself, Mayor Hanks. I have Commissioner Emrich, City Manager, Assistant City Manager Branco. We have our City Attorney Slayton. We have our Administrative Service Specialist,
She's
Miss-
special.
Ms. Reed, and we have our Recording Secretary, Ms. Hale. We also have Chief Titus there in the back, and Chief Garrison's also back there. Just a couple of reminders before we get down to business. Please turn off your cell phones or put them on vibrate. Anyone wishing to speak, please fill out a public comment card. That'll be right over here to your left, and you'll hand it to the gentleman right over here to my left, and he'll get it to right where it needs to be. With that, if you would, let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. If Commissioner McDowell will lead that.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we move to the approval of the agenda, I would like to ask the Commission if we can move item 5A up. We have Chairman Hines is here with Sarasota County. We'd like to welcome him. Thank you so much. The approval of the agenda, can we move that up to the front?
After 2?
Yeah, right after our public comment. Is that fine with the Commission? Okay, then I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda with item 5A moving up to after public comment.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Oh,
Yeah, I'll second.
All right, I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Luke, seconded by Commissioner Emrich. Let's call the vote. And the motion carries. Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Vice Mayor, have
I'm still working on it, Mayor. Here, if you want to get those guys started, because they're all,
Yep. Thank you.
sorry.
All right, I'm going to call up the first four, and if you would just line up here on the side, and we'll get moving. Ms. Lockhart, Ms. Morgan, and Ms. Alice White. You have three minutes. Please state your name for the record.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Barbara Lockhart, and the purpose of my public comment tonight is to request Commission review and consideration of the ways the city's tree fund monies are currently being used versus what the tree fund provisions have outlined as being their intended uses. To review, the tree fund is to be used to advance the following public purpose intentions of Chapter 45's tree protection regulations: purchasing property within the city to be used only for tree preservation purposes, planting trees from the tree priority list on public lands within the city, educating the public on proper care of trees, maintaining tree health and safety on public lands within the city, purchasing conservation easements on privately owned property within the city. Regarding Provision 1, purchasing property within the city to be used only for tree preservation purposes. This means exactly what it says, and to my knowledge, this provision has not been met by the city to date. If I'm incorrect, then what may have been purchased to date is not enough. The now cleared lot next to Walmart that had a forest of old-growth oak trees on it is a prime example of a property that could have potentially have been purchased for tree preservation under this provision and turned into a passive park for future generations to enjoy. Instead, a hole will be dug where the old oaks once were, and a retention pond will soon take their place. At the rate the city is being built out, we are in a race against developers to preserve some of our native landscape in the city. Purchasing existing mature treed property within the city to be used only for tree preservation purposes must happen now, and it starts with you, our commission. Regarding Provision 5, purchasing conservation easements on privately owned property within the city. To my knowledge, no conservation easements have been purchased by the city to date. Again, if I am incorrect, then what may have been purchased to date is not enough. Purchasing conservation easements on property that already has existing mature trees, native plants, and vegetation on it would maintain wildlife corridors, wildlife habitat, and native landscape buffers. Purchasing conservation easements within the city must happen now, and it starts with you, our commission. Commissioners, the time is now to direct staff to begin making purchases of land and conservation easements under the tree fund language for the purposes of tree preservation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Goff. Ms. Morgan?
May I ask a favor?
Yes, ma'am.
Ms. Lockhart, could you please send me your notes? Thank you.
Morgan and then Ms.
Hi, Joan Morgan, and I certainly agree with trees. I hate the clear cuts. I love trees. Anyway, I'm here to thank you. Thank you for, this week really exemplifies what Northport is, okay? We had Tour de Northport. I mean, unbelievable, the amount of work, the amount of effort and everything else People for Trees, Alice White and her whole committee does. Phenomenal, phenomenal, phenomenal. Every year they do it. We also had the opening of the pool, 40 years. Anyone and everyone in Northport needs to get there. Anyone who stalled it for 40 years, anyone who voted against it for the 40 years, anyone who stopped it for 40 years needs to get out there and see that facility and say, I am very, very sorry. That is so unbelievably wonderful. And I did all three of them. Once upon a time, I was more of a barracuda. Now I think I'm more of a dolphin. But man, I'll tell you what, they're fun, aren't they? It is just great. Can't thank you all enough. I don't care if we even spend a few tax dollars keeping that pool going, but I really don't think we're going to, because I think it's going to be very, very popular. But on the other hand, that's life. That's community. That's enthusiasm. That's keeping people as families. And maybe we can spend less money trying to keep them from not being depressed. Okay? What we had here the other night, we had a video, Choices and Chances, which shows the other side of our city, that we actually are willing to tackle the big problems: cutting, bullying, suicidal thoughts, accident, distracted driving, and all these things that unfortunately our teens are suffering from, and adults. We had a lot of teenagers, not as many as we'd like, but we had some, and they were very honest in what they said to us about what's happening, the apathy that's here among the young. You can't go to that pool, though, and be apathetic, I'll tell you that much. So thank you for taking and being willing to have such movies, to be willing to be involved in such things as Holly's Hope and other organizations that we're going to be working on, and helping us work on those issues, because we are a real community, and that shows what we are. And then there's Halloween. Man, no one does Halloween like Northport. Second floor, I see you're really at it again trying. Good luck, first and third, okay? But there has never, ever been anything like Halloween here. Been involved with it for many, many, many years. Can't thank every single group that has worked so hard, and the employees of City Hall that work so hard to make sure Halloween is so special. Northport has proved this week how special it really is in all avenues. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Ms. White and Mr. Rodriguez.
Hi. Good evening, Commissioners. I'd like to piggyback on Barbara's comments.
Can you please state your name for the
Oh,
record?
I'm sorry,
Ms.
Alice White, Froud Street, Northport, about the use of the tree fund. And I'd like to ask the Commission to review how the money in that tree fund is being used versus what the tree fund provisions have outlined as being acceptable uses. Also, I was a member of the original City Commission Blue Ribbon Ad Hoc Committee who helped determine those uses, and I can give testimony as to what were the intended outcomes. You recently approved using tree fund money to pay for 50% of the salaries of the 2 people employed as city arborists. So it should be reasonable to expect that 50% of their time would be spent on advancing and monitoring all of the tree fund approved activities, which was actually confirmed by the city manager when he stated that the arborist also has to manage all of the other activities in the tree fund, implying that collectively the arborists spend 50% of their time on those activities. In 2018, tree fund money was used to pay for a second arborist to help to maintain effective working relationships with the public and help monitor job sites. But it seems most of the time spent by the now 2 arborists remains dedicated to reviewing development plans, permitting, conducting field inspections that include checking for wildlife compliance. It seems that using tree fund money to pay for arborists to review plans under the pretense of saving trees isn't producing the desired result to preserve existing trees, since those development sites often result in total clear cutting of trees, such as that parcel on Aiden Lane where those majestic oaks were just totally removed. The tree fund money is also supposed to be used to educate the public about trees and how to properly care for them. But it seems that the only contact a resident has with an arborist is when a permit is being requested to remove a tree. It's apparent that communicating initially with developers and ultimately the management companies of commercial sites about the proper care of trees isn't happening, such as how the trees planted are expected to achieve that required 35% canopy coverage. How else would that explain all those photos I've sent to all of you about the trees that were horribly chopped, topped, sculpted, practices that are not only prohibited in our ordinance, but will prevent those trees from ever attaining the canopy coverage required? Trees that planted on commercial sites have died, have been removed, are dying, but have not been replaced. So where's the monitoring? The arborist should be assigned with carrying out the provisions of that tree fund, the very fund being used to pay a portion of their salaries as approved by this commission in order to produce those intended results of maintaining and protecting our tree canopy. So I think it's time that the commission really consider giving staff direction to begin carrying out those provisions as they were written and intended in order to justify using the tree fund money to pay those salaries. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. White. Mr. Rodriguez, Ms. Beal, and then Ms. Ballmer.
Yeah, hello everyone. Yeah, my name is Hugo Rodriguez. I have a comment on the road on North Orlando. It's been closed for 8 months. So today was the third time that I went to Public Works to find out. They said that you're gonna vote today on something, I don't know. So basically that's my concern. I don't know how long it's gonna take to fix that.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms.
Yeah,
Julie.
Vice Mayor.
Can Ms. Julie come up and fill us in as to what's happening out there on Orlando, please? City Manager.
Yes, Vice Mayor, Julie Belia, Public Works Director.
For the record, Juliana Belia, Public Works Director. This evening in the Road and Drainage District on the consent agenda, we had a request for permission. We had several months ago, and the gentleman is right, a pipe failure at Orlando and Richbrier. We identified some savings in money from the budget last year, and we had received permission in a road and drainage meeting to replace those pipes. They're very large pipes and very long runs of pipes. Unfortunately, we had to close the roads for that period of time because of being able to identify funding to replace the pipes. It's close to $400,000, and it's on Orlando and Richbrier. So it's going to be a few more months, but we will have the pipes replaced and the road reopened again.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Ms. Beal and Ms. Ballmer.
Good evening. My name is Elsa Beal. I'm at 1568 Cloud Court in Northport, Florida, which is known as the Northport Estates. The reason for my public comment is to come to you and make known that in early October, we were able to attend a planning and zoning meeting where several of the Northport Estates residents were notified of a rezoning petition of some agricultural land into general commercial, at which point my husband and I scrambled to put a package together to address this, and we sent a copy to the commissioners, and we were able to obtain a copy of the report from staff. I'm not here to talk about the ins and outs of this, only to say that it would be my hope that in trying to notify the residents of Northport Estates or anybody in town about a rezone, that perhaps a better job be done. I love the city of Northport. We've lived here for many years. Specifically, of course, the Northport Estate area where we live. And to be confronted with a card that says you're going to rezone and then be presented with this kind of report that's almost like a given, that it's already a done deal, based on what the report says. It's almost like it's one-sided to the petitioner and not being made to feel that we count as a resident. And so I just want to say that the ordinances that were all kind of go together, which is the Activity Center 4, bringing those lots into Activity Center 4, as well as the rezone and addressing the amendment to the map and so forth. Those are all important to the Northport Estates residents, and I would hope that there would be a better way of the signage, which was just tiny little sign and just that communication, because there's new times and new age, of communicating. There's social media, and it's just not about a little thing in the newspaper anymore. And I just want you to consider that for the good of all the residents here in the estates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Branco, I know we are very active in social media and all those aspects. Were we advertising through all our media channels concerning this?
I'm not sure. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Oh, okay. Can we have somebody maybe get her information so we can get some information to her?
Absolutely.
Ms. Balmer?
Hi, good evening. I'm Susan Bummer. I live on Chin Avenue in the Estates, which is just a little bit over from the area that is in consideration for rezoning. My concern also is the fact that we didn't find out about this until late. I was informed that the only thing the city needed to do was to put a little ad in the newspaper. And knowing that a lot of people don't read the newspaper anymore, along with the very small signs, was just a red flag to me that, maybe we need to stop and look at how really the Northport Estates is a unique part of Northport. And I know you want all the citizens of Northport to be happy living here. And I don't think if they end up putting something in our backyard, like where we're looking at the back of a truck stop or a hotel, that we are going to be very happy. So I would just like to ask you to come out and look at the area and read the information that we found about what's going on, and see if we can find a way to let people know and just take into consideration the effect that noise and lights is going to have on the wildlife and the whole uniqueness of our part of Northport Estates. So my reason for being here is just before this comes up, to just ask you to please kind of look at it from our point of view, other than just making a lot of money for the city. Toledo Blade at that end, dead ends. There is a hiking park there. So the fact that, and what I keep hearing is, well, we need to bring more resources and all out in that area. No, we don't. No, we don't. There's enough on the other side of 75 and enough room on the other side of 75. So just take time and come out and see what we're talking about. I'd ask you. Thank you.
Citizen
Mayor, if you would mind, we have Nicole Galehouse to kind of speak on this item. She provided me with some more information.
I just wanted to, for the record, Nicole Galehouse, Planning Manager. I just wanted to clarify the question about social media. We did not post this on social media. We generally speaking don't post any of our legal notices that way. Not saying it's not something we couldn't look into, but it's just not been our standard practice. It's not required by any of our ordinances or state laws. For a rezone, we do post in the paper and we mail notices to all residents within a quarter mile of the property. And we did recently start also posting the property. This is actually the first project that we have posted the property on. We did not used to do that, and that is not required by state law or our local codes. For the other petitions on this, the only requirements are the legal ad notices in the paper for the comp plan amendment and the text amendment that go with it. So.
Vice Mayor?
Yeah, living here for 30 years, I'm glad to see that the posting on the property is back as common practice, because I remember when that was done years and decades ago, and then it just kind of stopped. So I am grateful that that is done, and maybe we need to revisit our ordinance to make sure that this is going to be an ongoing process.
We've identified this as part of the rewrite that we want to include these and actually to go even further than what we're currently doing, but yes.
Appreciate that comment. Thank you very much. And maybe if you guys want to get with the citizens.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to announcements. Oh, I'm sorry, no, no. We're actually going to move on to Commissioner Hines.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Thanks for having me here. I really appreciate it. This will be the last time that I address you as chairman, and I've really enjoyed and appreciated the opportunity to come and dialogue with you all as the policymakers directly. You know, we have joint meetings, just had one. We're going to have another one coming up, but I think in the interim, this is a good opportunity to kind of let you know what we're thinking about, what we're working on, and the same thing, what's important to you, so that we can work and collaborate on things. So the timing on this is important because as we come into December is when we have our retreat and pick our priorities for the next coming year. And so if there's things that's important to you that you think we need to address and that maybe we're not aware of, this is the time to talk to me, talk to the other commissioners, and see if we can find the things that we have common ground on and make that a priority of the county commission. And I was coming here and I said, you know, we get so busy and we're always looking ahead. And I said, wait a second, go back the last couple of years and just think about some of the major things that we've accomplished here in Northport and South County. And they're massive projects. I'm going to miss a lot of the other ones, but just think about a couple of years ago, you know, what we've done with the Shannon Staub Library and what's occurred there. The Atlanta Braves Stadium and training facility. Bob Johnson's Landing and that park, the bridge and the partnership of the Myakkahatchee Park and that, and I think we've even made strides on the Three Graces fountain on there. So those are some things that just a few years ago were difficult, controversial, and now they're there and they're moving. They're done or they're moving forward. And here's a couple other ones that are moving forward that we're going to see happen fairly quickly. The South County Courthouse, we're going to have a brand new South County Courthouse for all the folks that live down here. Construction or part of that process has already occurred. Hopefully maybe you saw the back road going out, but that's going to get going here at the end of the year, the beginning of next year. River Road, we had our joint meeting. We signed that deal with the state, so that's moving forward, and the construction of that to begin in 2021. Legacy Trail, that was a big conversation that we had in our joint meeting, but just think about where that was a couple years ago. It was just kind of an idea, yeah, maybe, bam. Keep pushing on that. Let's get that thing through Deer Prairie Creek and also the improvements on the Power Line Road. That's such a game changer for this community. Winchester Boulevard, that's out for bids right now, and that's going to be repaved either in December or January. Now let's look ahead. A couple things that I'd like you all to keep in your mind and probably already are, but we talked about how to collaborate with us, you all, the city, also even Charlotte County on South River Road. So that's going to be the next step. I don't want to push too hard until I see the construction cones done or going on River Road, North River Road, but that's the next phase to keep South River Road in front of everybody. Also, that we've discussed is our support, whatever we can do in regards to another I-75 interchange exit down here. One that's kind of gone quiet recently, but I'd like to see that one brought back up again. It was one of our priorities this year, is the Orange Hammock deal. You heard some people tonight talking about preserving areas. That's kind of the last big major property north and east of I-75 that would complete that wildlife corridor. So that's one. And then also to improve access to the public lands that we do have and already own north of the interstate, to create some economic development for the city in an ecotourism way. Right now, people really, they're there but don't really use them and know about them. And so please consider that. And then also leveraging the economic development and bringing real jobs, real careers, a real large employer to Northport through the relationships that we're creating through the Atlanta Braves, the city of Atlanta, and also basically the entire Southeast that knows now of Northport. This one's kind of a personal one. A couple weeks ago, I sat with a group that was kind of strategizing about the Boys and Girls Club and the future of that. This city's growing so rapidly, and so many young individuals, and the Boys and Girls Club is such a great organization. You're clearly going to need another one here. And so whatever the county can do, we deal with some in North County, and so I'm happy to work with you all on that. Let me hit a couple other things and then take any questions that you have. I just got back from Washington, D.C. last week, met with our Senator Scott, Senator Rubio, our Congressman Buchanan and Stubbe, and the main focus of that conversation was water quality issues for the Gulf Coast. And so they're very keen to that, and that's just such an important aspect environmentally and also for our economy that Sarasota County is going to keep pushing those. And whenever we can partner with you on different projects, because the last thing we want to do as government is just create a new ordinance, create a new law, create a new fee, or create or start a project, but without good science to be able to talk to our constituents and say, we're going to do this septic to sewer project in your neighborhood, and we're going to tear up your roads, and it's going to cost you more money. You better be able to tell them why you need to do that and why it's the right thing to do. So there's some research and work that we need to do and work on that. Another thing that you're going to hear us talking about, we've talked about a little bit, is what we're calling a community treatment facility. Sarasota County's jails population kind of ebbs and flows, but we're getting to the point that that jail's getting a little too full. But what we're finding out when we really research, a lot of people that are there, drug addiction and mental health problems. Yes, they've committed a crime, but it's related to other things. So locking them up really isn't helping them and is not really helping society. So right now, the sheriff has treatment pods where people are transferred out of a normal jail cell into a pod-type situation. It's been very successful, so successful that the county commission funded 40 beds at First Step up in North Sarasota. We're going to secure that facility. It's not a come and go as you please type of shelter, but it's going to be secured, and they're going to receive treatment. It's folks that say, look, I've made mistakes in my life. I'm addicted to opioids. I have mental health problems. I have trouble staying on my medication. But when I'm on my medication, I'm employable. I'm okay. But when I'm off of it and I don't have support around me, I break into cars. It's as simple as that. So we're already doing that. But the community treatment facility is something that the Criminal Justice Commission has recommended that we proceed, put it as a capital improvement project. The sheriff is asking for about 200 to 250 beds to be able to take those folks out of a jail setting, still in a secure setting, and the result will be we don't have to build a new jail. And we'll have better results when these folks leave that they'll have training. So you're going to hear about that over the next year or so, because that's a major project. But we need to talk about it now and build community support. Homelessness. Let me address that. When I first came on the commission, homelessness in downtown Sarasota was horrible. If you walked along the streets in Sarasota, you were accosted. You would stop your car at an intersection, and they'd come up to you and bang on the window in your car and demand money. We've addressed those problems, I think, pretty well and are managing them pretty well. You're never going to cure them, but it's working well in downtown Sarasota. Where the issue exists now, and I hope you all are familiar with it, is they're in the woods. They're in our parks, and they're kind of hidden away. And actually, that makes them more vulnerable, especially women. I've toured Inglewood and Nokomis with our homeless outreach team that's run by the sheriff, and you would basically go 50 feet, 100 feet off of a main road, and there's a homelessness camp. And you go and talk to them. They're living there, and there are mental health drug issues with them. The problem that we're having is, though the county commission has funded beds at the Salvation Army in downtown Sarasota, the problem we're having here is when you talk to those people that are in the woods in Inglewood or Nokomis and so forth, they don't want to leave. And I've mentioned this to you all before, but we have to collaborate with the county, your city, and the city of Venice, and the community of Inglewood, which is obviously in the county. We need to find some homeless beds here that we can offer to the people here, get them out of the woods, get them into treatment, and then hopefully get them into some permanent type housing and permanent type treatment. They just don't want to go to Sarasota. They see South County as their home, even though they're living in the woods. That sounds strange, but that's the hardest problem right now our homeless outreach team has to get people to engage is, I don't want to leave Northport. I don't want to leave Venice. I don't want to leave Inglewood. So let's talk about that, because the likelihood is a facility would either be in your city or be in the city of Venice. Doesn't have to be, but we need to have that conversation to help these people. It's not good for business when you go in and someone's behind your business or sleeping in your, on your property, and it's not right for these people that are really subject to being victimized. Redistricting, we're going to have a special meeting on that on October 30th to try to discuss where the county commission wants to go from here. I think we're considering right now 4 or 5 different maps. The goal is, and the way I understand our commission and the various, I'm trying to put this together and not just speak for me, but right now the district numbers in regards to population among the 5 districts, there's 2 districts that are really out of whack of the other ones. And one of them's mine. I have almost 10 or 12,000 more people in my district, which will be an open seat, than another district. That dilutes the voting power of the folks in my district, and I think the other district is District 3. So if we can even those out prior to the election, that's what we're trying to do. It's got incredibly politicized on this. It's tough to deal with, but from the city of Northport's aspect, I know, I think Commissioner Carazone spoke about having a Northport commissioner and having a circle around Northport versus being it split between Venice, Northport, and Inglewood. I struggle with that a little bit and would prefer to have cities have 2 commissioners that are there for you. If you have a commissioner that maybe you differ on an opinion with single-member districts now, they're going to be more just accountable to the folks in your city. And if you need help, I always like to have 2. Right now, you can go to 5 of us. But so that's the debate that we're going to have on the 30th, to make you aware of that. And we talked about vaping in our joint meeting. Since that joint meeting, we have gotten the ordinances from Hillsborough County and also Alachua County. Our county attorney's reviewing those and would like to work with you all to potentially work together and make a county-wide ordinance. I talked to the city of Venice this morning. They liked that idea. I mentioned it to the city of Sarasota last night, and they seem to be open to the idea of doing a county-wide ordinance so you just don't jump between jurisdictions and the rules are different. Hopefully our state does something when they go into their meetings in January, but if they don't, I'd sure like us to be or if we see that that's just falling to the wayside, that we're ready to go and we have a proposed ordinance to proceed. And I think I'll stop there. We are a very blessed community. The growth is coming here. People want to live here, and it's because of management of cities and counties that I think we're doing a good job compared to other areas in our country, and we just have to manage those. And so I'll stop and take any ideas or thoughts that you all may have.
Thank you, Chairman. Commissioner Lind.
First of all, thank you for everything that has been accomplished. That list that you read off, there's a lot of successes there. And so thank you for the collaboration and the part that you guys play in making this county what it is. Thank you to you personally. You're a chairman, and you hold that position the way it needs to be, and
Thank you.
I truly appreciate that. Whoever follows in your footsteps, I hope they continue the same process that you have, because this is good to be able to come together and hear this type of dialogue. A couple of things that I want to touch on. First one, you brought up redistricting. I don't see it the same way. And I know you already know where I stand, so to me, you do not do redistricting before the census, so I'll leave that one alone. But the agendas for when we do get together on those joint meetings, I know it was spoke in the last one that we had that, you just don't have time to talk about everything. But that's why we have those meetings, is so that we can talk about what needs to be discussed. So I would like to see those agendas be larger than what they have been the last couple of times. We might not have needed a second meeting being called together if we could have had that agenda being larger.
Mr. Mayor, may I comment on that?
Certainly.
Sure. Totally agree. I was a little surprised that we only had two subjects on that. And then Commissioner Carazone started to ask for things on the next meeting. Where it got a little awkward was, and you all need to pick what you want on that agenda amongst yourself and vote on it and send it to us, and we'll do the same. But I don't know that we've ever said, well, I don't want to talk about that or take that one off. Because if it's important enough to a majority of you all, then it needs to be important to us. So the last one, River Road was a big deal, Legacy Trail was a big deal. But they were already so far along that meeting did go very quickly. And so if we have to, take a half a day, so what? Take a half a day. You're the largest city in the county. You're the largest landmass city in the county. So if it takes a half a day, so what? We don't need to be in a hurry. So feel free to add those.
I appreciate that, and we did have a consensus up on this dais and a list of what we wanted on that agenda. And most of it was what Commissioner Carazone had stated. So how it got slashed, I don't know, but I love hearing what you said, and maybe we can make sure that those agendas are carried through.
And that's an example of why I'm standing here. I trust our two staffs to work together, but you're the policymakers. If you want to discuss a subject with our policymakers, then we'll discuss it. And so what you vote on here and you want to hear it, if you need to copy me as the chairman of this is what you want to see on the agenda, please feel free to do so.
I appreciate that very much. And it's not because we're the largest city or anything of the sort. It's because we need to collaborate. We need to work together. There's more power with more people. So those are the reasons that we do. You brought up the fountain over at Warm Meadow Springs, and I sent a message to your administrator. It's not working again.
It's not working.
I don't know why.
Okay.
So I didn't receive anything back, but just so that you have heads up.
All right, thank you.
The fountain's not working again. Another one that you touched on was the meeting you have coming up December 13th, your retreat. You're going to be discussing the incentive package for economic development. As a city, we are not established. And so some of the businesses and entities that come here, they're the first ones to come into the city. And sometimes those incentives, that cash up front, is what it takes to make that first move, that first person come into the city. So I know you guys were discussing it. I attended your meeting. I believe there was 3 of you that saw that value, even from the history statistically. But for Northport's sake, I would really like to see some of that implemented back. I mean, we had a hotel come in, and the reason they came was because we gave an incentive for the impact fees, putting them, on a payment plan.
Yeah, we
type
deferred
thing. Right, so, but they were the first to come, and that was the reason, or they wouldn't have come, they stated that. So some of these incentives that you're thinking of, please keep in mind Northport, that we are trying to establish, and we have those first-time companies coming, and this might make the difference.
Okay,
So
will
we
do.
discuss that. The last thing that I would like to, well, first of all, the pods, oh yes, totally agree with those. Those are working wonderful up there. The vaping, I don't know as I want to wait to see what the state does in January, but having this consensus for the full county, it is good, so thank you. But the last thing I want to discuss is the community hospital taxation. We as the city pay $3.5 million for a hospital that's in Sarasota. And with the CON being removed, we have hospitals that are interested in us. But it doesn't look well or sit well with some of these hospitals that they would come and establish here, and we're giving $3.5 million to another hospital. And I know that was formed in, I believe, 1949. And I know there's a lawsuit that is going on. Some of the hospitals that are talking to us have told us that they're in the middle of that lawsuit. And the only way to abolish that is actually through legislation, the same way that it was established. I know there's a precedent of 2 counties have abolished it. I know it has been discussed back when the taxation come from the county commission level. I talked to some about abolishing it, that it would assist that situation of the lawsuit. But whether the entire thing is abolished or whether Northport is carved out of that somehow legislatively, I would love to see that occurred. And that is something that this dais has put forward as the #1 priority. Because we are underserved, with hospitalization and medical. And so we see that as the first step was the CON being removed. The next step is removing that taxation that we're forced to pay to that hospital. The precedent that was set, one of them abolished it in 2016.
Was
So
it,
is something
which
we-
county was that? Do you remember?
I will get that
Okay,
for you. I have
thanks.
a complete list of every county, and it could be the city attorney might be able to pull it up on hers. She did the work
Okay.
with me and for me. But there are 2 counties, and one of them was as recent as 2016. But I'll forward it to you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner McDowell.
Thank you for your list. I enjoyed hearing the past and what we're currently working on and what's in store for the future. It's always nice to give that little summary so that, because quickly we can forget things.
Right.
And we have done a lot working together in just 3 to 5 years. Oh my gosh, it's amazing, that list of the things that we've accomplished together, and I appreciate the county. You mentioned about the homelessness and trying to get some kind of facility down here. We had talked here about doing hotbeds. It was a topic of discussion last year. for some reason, it kind of disappeared. I don't know if Northport would be the location for a possible facility for hotbeds. I don't know if people from Nokomis would come to Northport or Inglewood would come to Northport. It sounds kind of like each little community is going to have their own type of facility. While they are homeless, they still have friends and family that they rely on and visit and go to. So that's part of the reason they don't want to leave what they know to travel,
Right.
30 miles away. They do have a base, even though they don't have a home, for whatever reason. So we really need to have a bigger conversation about hotbeds and figure out why it kind of like just fell off the radar.
I agree. I believe, I don't know what happened this past year, but I think if they're not on your main street, it kind of, everything's okay.
Right.
And that's not reality. So that's why I'm bringing it up, and our commission will, and we need to have that discussion.
You mentioned about vaping, and I appreciate you wanting to do this countywide, but it's not just vaping, it's the smoking. Smoking and vaping, all tobacco products. And I
Okay.
don't want to lose sight of that whole concept, because if we remove the vaping, then they're going to go back to smoking. So we have to make sure we encapsulate all of the tobacco products. Tabasco. And one of the things that I am going to be really focusing on this coming year is the agreement for the parks.
Right.
I know that's going to be a very hot topic. Recently, the county stopped paying the YMCA for their use of the pool because the pool closed. I'd love to see some monies coming to the city to help with the aquatic center. Because while the YMCA closed their facility, it still was the community pool. And now we have our aquatic center, which is the community pool for swimming lessons and all that kind of stuff. So I know that money is not going from the county to the Y. I'm curious why that money wouldn't go from the county to the city. So if maybe this question will open that door for a bigger conversation, I'm very hopeful. And Chairman Hines, I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to come down and talk to us every quarter. Like you promised a year ago, you kept your word. I admire that, and I really, really appreciate your effort to be engaged in our city. And I heard you've done this for all of the municipalities.
Right.
And that, my hat's off to you, because that is a true leader for the county, and thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Bring it up. Do you have something?
Yes, Mayor. Just talking to the city attorney, we actually did some work in regards to the homeless outreach team. The sheriff's representative reached out to us in March and expressed that they no longer had an interest and didn't foresee any of that action happening in Northport. We were to enter into an interlocal agreement with the sheriff. It just didn't happen. So I just wanted to kind of
Yeah,
let you know.
I still don't understand the why part of that.
Yeah, I think there was an opportunity with Catholic Charities with that facility, is that correct? I know the county, I believe, put some money in that facility where and I think it's Bill Spittler, and it's actually who runs the homeless outreach team for the sheriff, and he's the one that I'm working directly with, and he's the one that's directly in the field that's saying we need it. So maybe we couldn't strike a deal. It might be easier if we did it in the unincorporated area, because we just do it ourselves. But I think the city of Venice and you all need to be part of that conversation. And because I get pushback constantly from the city of Sarasota, who feels that they have to take all of the homelessness problem into their city. If someone wants to enter one of those beds, they're taken to Sarasota because there's not one here, or not one in Venice, or not one in Inglewood. So they constantly push on me, and I kind of say, okay, I agree. It shouldn't all, because this is a countywide problem. It's not just one area. That's why I'm bringing it to you.
And I appreciate that. So maybe if anything from today's conversation, it fell off the radar, maybe we could put it back on the radar.
Right.
So again, thank you for all of your efforts.
Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate your business down there. It's very informing. The main thing is where we're at today. I see the bridge between the city and the county growing stronger. I think we're working together a lot more, and I appreciate that. Vice Mayor McNell brought up a couple things that I was going to do with the parks coming up. I just hope we can work through that and come up with a reasonable solution. It is a hot topic. It's something that we've discussed before as a city and a county, and I just hope that we get a good resolution out of that. And again, with the money with the pools and the interlocal that was between the Y, the city, and the county, you know.
From the parks thing, let me back up and give the big picture on this. And then we approved a master parks plan a couple years ago that really national experts say counties should be involved in larger regional type parks. Cities should be involved in the smaller type pocket parks, parks that only deal with maybe people that live in the city. Where we run into a rub sometimes here are those tweener parks. So Nathan Benderson Park, easily a regional park. It brings people from all across the world. You can't argue, well, that's a city of Sarasota park, they should have it. A pocket park in the city of Venice that's in between 20 houses that has one little sidewalk that goes into there that really no one knows is there, that's not a park the county should be mowing the grass and trimming the trees. It's these types of parks that are between that. Why I'm telling you this is just our mindset. So when you come in and advocate for, hey, county, you should run this, or county, you should participate in the cost of it, is to argue and show that it does have a regional impact. And it's beyond just a small little one field softball field or a dog park in the middle of the city. And so in the past, our agreements with the cities were, we'll take care of those. And that just didn't make sense. And so it's hard to unwind this. We've done it with the city of Sarasota, going to work with you. The city of Venice's, I think, comes up in 2021 maybe. But that's the big picture of it. And where it gets hard is, as a 4-field baseball field that hosts tournaments from kids that come out of state or out of our community, considered a regional park. So I just say that, so when we work through this, keep that in mind. That's the big picture of what we're looking to manage, and then what we feel the cities should manage. The tweener parks are the tough ones.
Right, and going forward with that discussion, which we will have, and in talking about the resolution, is just maybe a streamlined resolution to where it's feasible for everybody to work with the transition, if so be it.
Okay.
That's all.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Chairman Hines, thank you again for coming. As Vice Mayor said, you've been phenomenal. You're the first commissioner I know that has done this, and I greatly appreciate that. Kind of tie into what these two were talking about. I think, if the county's been taking care of, let's say, 12 of our parks, and they say, you know what, 6 of those we're no longer going to do. But yet you're still going to make, so those costs are going to go back onto the city of monies that are already going to the county. So I think from my perspective, which kind of goes into what Commissioner Luke, or one of these two were saying, was whenever you're talking about the YMCA pool, all right? But if you apply that kind of that concept to the parks, our citizens almost feel a double taxation going on here. And I think that's kind of a problem that we feel, is that you're saying, we're no longer going to take care of the parks, you can take care of them, but there's no repercussion of those funds back to us in order to manage that cost.
And my response would be and it's hard, I use a little pocket park as an example. You can't argue that brings in people really from outside the city to use. So those funds that the city are paying to the county, where do they go? They go to these large regional parks that people in your city, like all the beaches, okay? We'll manage all those beaches. So even though there's not a beach in the city of Northport, your residents are going to go to one or many of them. So we want to manage those, and we want to manage them at a very high level because it's the benefit of our citizens and also other people that come in that pay a tourist development tax, pay a sales tax that we all benefit from, that we don't have to tax our homesteaded properties and our businesses more to use that. And so these larger regional parks where the kids, you got a Twin Lakes Park, you have a regional baseball tournament, all-star tournament. You have kids that are from Sarasota, Northport, Inglewood, all coming there. And we want those to be at a very, very high level for our residents, and then also to bring in those outside type of tournaments. So what I'd say is they are getting the benefit of that money because the bigger parks that are available to everybody in our county are going to be kept at a higher level. I'm not saying I'm right, you're wrong. That's just the counter argument to this, that when we looked at this, we, as a baseball coach and a football coach, and I traveled throughout the state with travel ball, our parks were always okay. And our community's better than okay. And we need to raise that level so that our kids are playing on great parks and great fields. And then if people want to come here and use our facility, take a Nathan Benderson Park, the best rowing park in the world. Well, we don't want dead trees and dead grass and, that type of stuff. So that was an economic development side of these larger regional parks. So it's going to be a good debate because which one falls on us, which one falls on you, and maybe which one do we split. But that's where we need to go.
And I do appreciate the answer because I just wanted the public to hear from you that answer because I do get it. It's kind of a part of a big family.
Right.
And we're all taking care of one another. But with that concept of a big family, we were talking about the incentives, for businesses and things like that. It's, you said so yourself that our land mass is the largest in the county, one of the largest in the state. We're a very fast-growing community. As a county as a whole, we've had some water quality struggles. These are things that need to be dealt with, whether it's the red tide or whatever it is. But also, as a city as large as we are, developed as, I guess, 60 years ago, as horribly as we were, we're looking at an infrastructure, an infrastructure for our city is going to be about $3 billion. Obviously, we're not going to do anything in the next 3 years or 5 years or 10 years that's going to plumb this entire city. But speaking to your concept of a big family, we are the area for growth for the county when you're talking about light manufacturing, things like that. And some of our areas, we are lacking that infrastructure. Some of them, we're lacking that infrastructure in. And with that whole family mindset of that whatever businesses we can bring into Northport benefits Sarasota as a whole.
Right.
And I would love to start in the mind that some of our infrastructure problems, not just our infrastructure problem. Some of our water and sewer, even for these businesses, aren't just ours, but it is a county-wide thing because it does represent the whole county whenever these things come in. So these are, that's just something I kind of want to put out there that I do see it. Obviously we need to be the biggest investment of our community, but having the mindset that you said as a family that we're all working in this together to bring these businesses here, to raise those tax dollars, to be able to provide better services, whether it's in our parks, to our community.
Great.
So,
Well, thanks for having me. Appreciate it, and we'll see you. Yes.
Can I throw something in about the parks? We have got fast pitch girls softball that brings in tournaments from all over at some of these parks that we have the baseball, softball parks. We have soccer that does the same things, bring in from the region around the state for these tournaments and stuff. So there are some of those mid ones that we need to look at But our competitive pool that we just opened up, you watch, they're going to be coming in from the nation and the international. We have got the water polo organization, Southwest Florida. I attended that meeting, you guys had too. They have latched hold of Northport.
Good.
Their commitment, they gave $5,000 to sponsor our pool at the ribbon cutting. And they have the ties for national and international competition and tournaments.
Great.
So that competition pool at our aquatic center, that's definitely,
Good.
it's going to come close to that rowing.
Facilities like that, they have to be used all the time.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know if they're going to be fiscally positive, but if you can get them as close to neutral, if not, it's a burden on the taxpayer. So you want them used a lot, and that's good news from that polo. So, well, thank you all.
Thank you
Have
very much for
a good evening.
Thanks.
Good night.
Okay. With that, we're going to move on to announcements. City Clerk, please read your announcements into the record.
The current vacancies for the following boards and committees include the Art Advisory Board, the Audit Committee, Beautification and Tree Scenic Highway Committee, Charter Review Advisory Board, Citizens Tax Oversight Committee, Community Economic Development Advisory Board, Environmental Advisory Board, Historic and Cultural Advisory Board, Joint Management Advisory Board, Northport Youth Council, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, Planning and Zoning Advisory Board, Public Utility Advisory Board, Zoning Board of Appeals. The upcoming expirations for the following advisory boards and committees are Beautification and Trees Scenic Highway Committee, Citizens Tax Oversight Committee, Firefighters Pension Board of Trustees, Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and Public Utilities Advisory Board. There is an opening for one Northport resident to serve on the Sarasota Manatee Metropolitan Planning Organization's Citizen Advisory Committee. If anyone would like more information, please see the city clerk's office. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. City Manager, have we had anything pulled for consent agenda?
Mayor, not on the consent agenda, but on the regular agenda. Apologize, I do have one item.
You have an item pulled off of the,
So nothing on consent, but on the regular, under general business. 7B, the applicant requested that we remove this item. They're not here tonight.
oh, all right,
Apologize.
so just remove it off of the night's meeting. All right. 7B, it's the discussion
B
of
as in
Kiwanis.
boy?
Yeah, the assistance program for the Kiwanis Club. So we'll pull it from, or they're not here, so. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to,
Move to approve the consent agenda.
have a second.
I'll second.
Have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Luke, seconded by Vice Mayor. Let's call the vote. And that motion carries. We'll move on to public hearings. Ordinance number 2019-01. Can I get a motion to direct the clerk to read ordinance by title only?
Push motion button.
Yeah, me neither. There it goes.
What you need?
I'll make a motion, Mayor, to have the city clerk read the ordinance by title only.
I'll second.
By Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Luke. Let's call the vote. And the motion carries.
An ordinance of the City of Northport, Florida, amending the code of the City of Northport, Florida related to right-of-way use permits, building permits, and certain shed permits and fees by amending Section 70-24, Administration, Permits, and Appendix A, City Fee Structure, Section K, Road and Drainage Fees, revoking the direction provided in Resolution Number 2018 R-28, providing for conflicts, providing for severability, providing for codification, and providing an effective date.
Thank you. All right, City Manager, please introduce the item.
Sorry, Mayor?
Please present the item.
Okay, so I have Julie Belia from Director of Public Works and also NDS staff here to talk about the actual item that was brought back where we're addressing sheds under 200 square feet.
Thank you, Ms. Branco. For the record, Juliana Belia, Public Works Director. Beginning back in November of 2018, the commission had directed staff to go back with sheds that are less than 200 square feet in size, that were not constructed on a slab, and also that were prefabricated. We needed to prepare a resolution suspending the issuance of the fees for road and drainage right-of-way use, and also plans review fees. Staff did that. They prepared Resolution 2018 R28 on December the 6th, 2018, of which Commission did adopt that resolution. We proceeded forward, and staff, Public Works staff, Neighborhood Development Service staff, we worked with the City Attorney's Office to prepare an ordinance with respect to making those changes with regard to the sheds under 200 square feet. And we have prepared ordinance 2019-01 incorporating all those changes, and they are presented for first reading today. Fiscal impact that we did identify in the Department of Public Works, we have plans review and right-of-way use permits. And between 2017 and 18, we processed 174 non-structural shed permits at a cost and revenue of $19,140. And between 2018 and 19, we processed 181 non-structural permits for costs of about $19,910. So in looking ahead, this would be revenue we would not be receiving in the Department of Public Works. However, we have gotten to the point now where we have 2 infrastructure inspectors located at Neighborhood Development Services. We had one that was working a lot of overtime hours. So by not having to review these permits, that's going to cut down on that overtime. And hopefully we can have one of those inspectors be able to go back out and do more inspections. So that is actually a good thing for our department. With that, are there any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Commissioner Luke, you have 8 minutes. Floor is yours.
Just 2 things that I have, I believe. On line 9, it talks about the 200 square foot. This definitely says less than 200 square foot.
Mm-hmm.
And I have seen throughout, and in the discussions that we had, it said 200 square feet or less. It included the 200. The way it's worded in that, it could not be 200 square feet. So for it to be inclusive of that, the wording needs to be changed.
You're proposing to change it 200 square feet or less?
That was the direction.
That was what we were discussing.
Because that would be 10 by 20.
And you'll find it flip-flop back throughout the backup material. At one time it says 200 or less, and then you find it stating this, so the ordinance really needs to be clear.
Commissioner, taking a look at the minutes from our file, you are correct.
She is correct.
And that's a simple change for us to make in the ordinance for second reading.
We'll make that change.
That's not a
Yes,
change.
ma'am.
We have to have another first reading.
Of course not, no.
All right, thank you for doing so. That was the only thing along that line that I had. The other one is, I mean, we are talking about sheds that are prefabbed, no floor, and coming in for storage. Why not containers? I mean, containers are actually more sturdy, if that's correct grammar. They're sturdier than even a prefab aluminum shed. So, and I know currently our ordinance does not allow for containers to be used as sheds, but you wouldn't be putting a container on a slab generally because it has its own floor. So this might be a topic that we need to bring forward at another point in time to see what kind of ideas or thinking that there is on containers, but I think they're very sturdy
and I've seen a lot of people use them for storage sheds. So with that, my 8 minutes is done, sir.
If I may make a suggestion, as the Neighborhood Development Services Department originally rendered the opinion on the shipping containers back in 2015, so that's about 4 years ago, going on 5 years ago, perhaps we could ask them through their ULDC review and update, maybe take a look at this issue.
I would appreciate that because I've read that. I've had it forwarded to me.
Yes, ma'am.
Basically, they just said the container does not fit the description in the code, and because the code
Okay.
said no. So
Yeah,
of
we
course
can
it
take
is.
another look at it with the NDS to find out, look at it in more depth.
And they may not fit in that 200 square foot or even as anything along those lines, but I think they need to be viewed for people. I've had them question me in regards to it, so thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner McDowell?
Going on to line 12, or 13, it should say. It says that the resolution remains in effect through November 1st. We are not going to be finished with second reading on November 1st, and I'm wondering, are you going to start charging anybody that comes in with a permit between November 1st and second reading completion for that right-of-way permit for the sheds under 200 square feet?
Well, if I may, and I may need a little assistance from the city attorney, I would say no, but also in here, the language, unless modified, revoked, or extended by commission. So perhaps tonight, that date could be extended until the second reading, so that it's clear that that resolution will remain in effect till second reading of ordinance 2019-01.
The attorney?
Yeah, I see that too. We would normally do that by a written document, not just a verbal motion, but I don't really see the downside of doing that considering it'll be such a short period of time, assuming this comes back for second reading on November 12th, right?
It'll be the second.
November 26th,
26th.
because of our road and drainage meeting.
Why would it be at road
This
and
is not
drainage?
on road and drainage.
Oh, excuse me, no, I'm
No,
sorry,
no,
I'm not
but
used
it's-
to
but
coming to
it'll still be
regular.
that-
Yeah, sorry,
same
November
meeting.
12th, sorry, I'm not used to being in the regular.
Depending on the complexity of the changes, but if they're just simple changes, tomorrow is the Legistar deadline for the November 12th meeting. So if the changes are fairly straightforward and simple, we can get it in for that meeting. So if that's the case, I don't particularly see the harm in providing your direction over the course of the 11 or 12 days that would elapse verbally rather than in writing.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll be sure and make sure we include that in the motion. Or a separate motion, thank you. So going on to line 77. Item F is struck from the record. It says the permit fee schedule shall be established by ordinance. The permit fee is attached here too in Exhibit A. And that's struck from the ordinance. However, when you go to line 71, it talks about the fees that we will be collecting. And then you go to line 115, and it talks about the fees in Exhibit A. So I'm wondering, why was this language on line 78 struck from the record?
Because the language is no longer needed. The permit fee is established by this ordinance. It is established in Appendix or Exhibit A to the code. It's not attached to the ordinance. The language is inaccurate and no longer necessary. When you look down at line 115 where you have the fee that was already established in the code, just clarified by this ordinance, it is an Appendix A to the city code.
Okay, so it's kind of like redundant language?
Yes, and unnecessary. And further, I would say best drafting practices provide that you don't have language like this in your code because it's really not best practice to codify your fees. This is one of those areas that you hear me talk about a little bit about things that we have codified in our code that aren't, typically laws that are in the code themselves. Fees are typically, or a fee schedule would typically be adopted by resolution rather than by an ordinance and in our code. So we don't need to set forth the process here. It's already being done that way, and it's not even the best process, in my opinion.
But if we codify it through an ordinance that gets 2 readings and that gives the citizens an opportunity to come back. If they miss it the first time, come back for a second time, whereas if it's done by resolution, it's one and done.
If your concern is to provide more citizen participation,
Yes.
you can always provide more citizen participation in numerous ways, rather than choosing your vehicle, because the vehicle requires more citizen notice. So rather than saying, we want to do it by ordinance because an ordinance requires 2 public hearings, the ordinances are by the Florida statutes and by our charter are to establish laws, whereas resolutions are more administrative matters, like fees. So you choose the proper vehicle based on the characterization of the vehicle. If you'd like more public input on something that you're adopting by resolution, then have a workshop about it, or, a neighborhood meeting, or, continue it for another, whatever. There are other ways to achieve that goal than to do it by ordinance and in the code.
Thank you for that explanation. Going down to line 101, it basically is that item K is basically talking about if the stormwater drainage system, which is the swale, is damaged by the person who gets the permit. They're saying that they don't have to repair it, but that the city may perform the necessary repairs. And I'm wondering, why wouldn't we have who caused the damage do those repairs when it's obvious?
If I may, Vice Mayor, there's this section of the code, Article 270-24. This is primarily with respect to the road and drainage district. So what we did was we kind of cleaned it up. And if you look, it's been replaced just the way it was actually renumbered on page 205, line 50, beginning on line 59.
Ah,
So that language was inserted over there. It was taken out over here.
gotcha, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
I saw the underline, didn't pay
Okay.
attention, it just kind of like all blended together.
We were just kind of cleaning up, some housekeeping things went into it as
Thank
well.
you.
Mhm.
This is my last one, Mayor, the city attorney weighed in regarding a ordinance template to amend the building code, Florida Building Code. And I'm wondering, do we need to give the city attorney direction to bring back that ordinance for that amending?
Mr. Mayor, may I speak to this, please?
You absolutely can.
Vice Mayor, my answer is no.
Okay.
The backup, for some reason, includes the request for legal services here, and our response to the request for legal services, which is not particularly useful to the item, as the request attaches an ordinance doing the wrong thing, and the response essentially says, here's the right ordinance, and hey, when you do want to amend the Florida Building Code, we went ahead and cleaned that up for you to create a template. So in the future, the next time, or when that does need to happen, it will be easier for you to draft it, and it will be faster for us to review it.
Thank you, because I did ask the question in an email to you, and you gave me a very similar response, but I couldn't get your tails out of that response either, so thank you for that clarification.
It's just not needed here.
Okay, thank you. I'm finished, Mayor, thank you very much.
Okay, wonderful. I'll entertain a motion to continue this ordinance extending the whereas line 12 to the second reading.
Is that your motion?
Oh, I don't know.
Somebody's got the motion button.
I just pressed it.
All right, that's not what I meant to do. I was just reminding
Do
everybody.
you want me to take the gavel while you make it?
All right, here you go. All right, then I make a motion to continue ordinance number 2019-01 for second reading, extending the whereas item on line 12 into the second reading. Right, to make
No,
sure.
we gotta make that a separate motion.
I think, Mr. Mayor, based on the conversation I heard, that you would like to continue the ordinance a second reading, clarifying that it would apply to sheds that are 200 square feet or less, and that you would like to
Oh, that is
extend the
true. Yeah, I looked that
direction
up.
in Resolution 2018 R28 until November 12th.
Yeah, which is the second reading.
Yeah, I heard him say that.
Yeah, that's what I heard.
Yeah.
Okay, so I left out the other one I have.
And I'll second that motion.
Hold on,
Yeah,
hold on,
so,
guys.
all right, so I make a motion to continue the ordinance, changing the verbiage to read 200 square foot or less. And then the whereas in line 12, bringing it to, or making it effective as of November, no?
Extending.
Or extending it, yeah.
Extending the resolution.
Extending the resolution, yes.
number.
Extending the resolution. Yeah, the resolution number.
Number
2018 R28.
That's what she said.
That's it.
Okay.
That's what we're doing.
I have a motion on the floor that's going to continue ordinance number 2019-01, changing 200 square feet or less, and line 12, extending resolution 2018 R28 to the second reading. Do I have a second?
I seconded it.
Seconded by Commissioner Luke.
I've got nothing.
Nothing? Commissioner?
This is going to be second reading November 12th. Thank you.
Yes.
November 12th?
Yes.
All right, before I vote on that, I do have a question, City Attorney. If by chance the November 12th second reading doesn't happen, what happens then to Resolution 2018-R28?
The direction therein will expire. And technically, you're giving the direction now, I mean, so you're not doing it by resolution. Technically, what you're saying now is we want to extend the direction of the city manager to not collect these fees and not undergo these processes. So you're delivering that direction, and maybe you could say until the time at which this ordinance.
Well, that's what I said the first time.
That's what he said. I'm just asked if it was
the
going to come
date.
back on the 12th. I was not changing the motion.
Just for the motion and all the motions as a board, we need to be clear, because when we go back to look at the board's direction, we can't read intent into that. So the language is important.
All right, so City Clerk, could you please read back the ordinance as stated, if that's possible?
To continue ordinance number 2019 To continue ordinance number 2019-01 for second reading, changing the verbiage to 200 square feet or less and extending resolution number 2018 R28, and to move this meeting to the second reading to November 12th, 2019.
Thank you very much. So I have the floor. I would like to support this, but we need to remove, to keep it clean, the second reading date from that motion. If somebody could make an amendment.
I'll make the amendment to remove the date in the motion so that it reads strictly to the second reading.
I'll second.
Thank you. I have an amendment on the floor removing the date noted in the main motion. And second, that was made by Commissioner Luke and seconded by Commissioner Emmerich. We'll go ahead and take the vote on the amendment, please.
Got it right back where I said it the first time.
All right, and that passes 4-0. And if there's nothing else to the main motion, I'll call the question. And that also passes 4-0. Mayor, here, you can have your gavel back.
If I ever do another one.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you guys very much. All right, we're going to move on to our petitions. This is a quasi judicial hearing, so I will need the clerk to swear in those wishing to provide testimony.
Can everyone wishing to provide testimony please stand and raise your right hand? Do you swear and affirm that the testimony you are about to provide is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge, so help you God?
I do. For ex parte communications, Commissioner Luke.
I had agenda briefing with Assistant City Manager, Assistant City Attorney, and I think that, and Susie. It was mentioned, but we did not go into any detail with this topic.
Vice Mayor.
I have nothing.
And I also have nothing. Commissioner Emmerich.
None.
All right. All right, so we're going to move on to our presentation from the applicant.
Mayor, the applicant for this plat is Strickland Smith on behalf of Height Design.
Hi, good evening. My name is Strickland Smith with Height Design, and I have been sworn. I'm here tonight representing Devasta Homes for the final plat of Island Walk Phase 6. It's a 66-unit, single-family subdivision in Island Walk that sits at the southwest corner of Island Walk. It's actually the last phase of Island Walk to be platted tonight. The subdivision and infrastructure plans for the phase were reviewed and approved by staff. There's an infrastructure bond in place as a result of that review. The final plat was also reviewed and approved by staff as well as the city's appointed surveyor. The plat has been recommended for approval by the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board, and we're just here tonight to ask for your final approval of that plat. And that's all I have for you unless you have any other questions for me. Steve Platke with the Pulte Group is also here if you have any questions for the developer.
Thank you. Okay. Steph.
Nicole Galehouse, Planning Division Manager, and I have been sworn. So as the applicant stated, this is a plat for 66 single-family lots over about 22.8 acres. The plat has been reviewed and approved by the city surveyor. It is consistent with the approved subdivision and infrastructure plans as well as the applicable village district pattern plan and any city regulations. We have received a bond on the infrastructure for this project, and the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board unanimously recommended approval. And that's all I've got.
Thank you. Since I would assume you would have no rebuttal to that.
I do not.
Okay. Then we will move on to public comment. Do I have any public comment on this?
Mayor, I do not have any public comment on this item.
Great. We'll move on to questioning. Do we have anybody for the floor? No? Okay, then I'll entertain a motion.
Do you want to close public hearing?
Oh, I do want to close the public hearing. Public hearing is not closed. Okay.
Mayor, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve petition number PLF 19-158.
And I'll second.
Motion on the floor by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Liu. Anything to that, Vice Mayor?
No. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, let's call the vote.
Uh-oh.
If you're going to make a motion, you ought to vote on
I am going to say yes. I didn't get, my thing didn't even come up.
She showed.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I said yes. My vote is yes to approve. Thank
All
you.
those in favor, aye, just for the
Aye.
record. Aye. Aye. Those opposed? And that motion carried.
She's got a trigger finger.
Draw the brow over there. I was like, how did that happen?
That's what happened to me the first time.
All right, we're going to move on to our next item. This is a quasi-judicial hearing, Development Master Plan for Palm Court Apartments. Clerk, please swear in those wishing to provide testimony.
And everyone wishing to provide testimony, please stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to provide is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge, so help you God?
I do.
I do. Sworn on the last one, I apologize.
All right, any ex parte communications, Commissioner Liu?
It is the same with me.
McDowell?
Yes, my ex parte communication includes various emails that were sent and received from the citizens. Within the past 10 days, I forwarded all of those emails to the city clerk's office. I did do a question and answer between me and city manager and staff through email. Assistant city manager had forwarded that to the city clerk's office. I did also watch the PZAP meeting from October 3rd, and today I went and took a drive over there to see the distance for my own knowledge.
Commissioner
I
Liu, did you have something?
have to add something. I did do something different. I actually went down to planning and zoning and we pulled out some maps. I asked them some questions because of an email I had received from a citizen, so I wanted to see and discuss actually buffering, distances, location of the lot in that section, and how the different buffering and setbacks fit into that. And that was with Nicole Galehouse.
Heather.
What's your last name, though?
Heather Hansen.
It was with those two. Thank you.
Thank you. I have none. Mr. Hammond. All right, we'll move on to our applicants.
Mr. Mayor, before we move on, if I may just ask you if you would mind confirming whether Commissioner Luke had any other ex parte? I know that there's been some distinction, but the disclosures from the last hearing are separate than the record for this hearing.
Right.
So if there was any repetition, that would need to be restated here. So I just wanted to confirm
Okay.
that what you just stated was all of your ex parte and there wasn't anything else.
They were
Only
two
ex parte.
totally different. This is all of my ex parte.
For this
This
item.
one. Correct.
Thank you. All right, applicant, please present your, please give us your presentation.
Good evening, Commission. My name is Jeremy Couch with Tampa Civil. I'm here representing the applicant, SP Port. Also joining me today are the project engineer, Alex Kuzmeyer, our traffic engineer, and the applicant themselves.
Please state that you've been sworn for the record.
I have been sworn, thank you.
Thank you.
Our request in front of you tonight is for the development master plan approval for a apartment project that will contain 126 units. We have worked very hard with your staff to prepare a site plan that meets the intent of both underlying sections of your code that we have to comply with. There are waivers, and the purpose of the waivers are to get us into compliance with both the PCD district that we are in, which does allow the multifamily use, and also the urban design manual, which has different requirements. The waivers before you, as outlined in your staff report, are to reduce the front yard setbacks and go with a type of a zero lot line setback. We're not exactly on the lot line, but we are have a 15-foot minimum setback along Price and along Citizens. The urban design guidelines recommend zero lot line or a situation where you have a single row of parking between the right-of-way and the principal structure. We feel that the plan proposed with the waiver allows the structures to be on the outside while not completely on the right-of-way line, 15-foot back, while the parking envelope is within the community itself. In addition, regarding the western property buffer, we were slightly confused by the code, so we requested a waiver on this. I'm going to read you the code section and explain this to you because we weren't quite clear, so we just requested a waiver to be safe. It states in section 53-113 in the PCD zoning district, it says areas shall maintain a minimum buffer area of 40 feet measured from the property line unless modified by the DMP. And then it says the buffer shall only apply to the perimeter, which abuts single-family recorded lots or a drainage area. The western portion of our project abuts the Creighton Waterway.
I have it on the screen if you want to display it.
Thank you. So the western portion of our project abuts the Creighton Waterway. And as I read the code section, it says that you shall maintain a 40-foot buffer with the exception, it says that the restricted uses in the buffer are buildings, parking areas, loading areas, all hard improvements, storage areas, and other principal uses. But it does say that these areas shall contain passive recreational facilities such as picnic areas, nature trails, which we are providing, of native habitat and water resources. So we have no structure closer than 40 foot to the west. We are providing a trail so that the future residents can get some enjoyment of this waterway, but we are also providing a 10-foot buffer that's planted, and staff has recommended additional plantings, which we agree with. And that buffer will bring us into compliance with the landscape regulations, requiring that multifamily adjacent to a right-of-way and all other streets is a type C with a 10-foot width. So we have the plan development category of the code and the urban design And so we've hopefully come up with a project that staff supports and allows us to operate within both sections of the code. I'd like to reserve any additional time we have for any questions staff might, the commission might have.
We'll move on to question in just a minute. We have our own little policy here
Okay.
that we have to stick with. I'm
Yes,
so
sir.
sorry. Staff?
Heather Hansen, Senior Planner. I have been sworn. I'll just go into a little bit more detail about the project itself before we talk about the waivers. It was already mentioned, 126 units, and everyone knows where it is, correct? It's just north of Fire Station 84, south of Price, and west of Toledo Blade. Well, actually, it's right on Citizens Parkway. The apartments will be a mix of 1, 2, and 3-bedroom units. The construction costs are subsidized through state low-income housing tax credits, which is not Section 8 housing, enabling rents to be affordable to residents with incomes that are 40, 60, and 80% of area median income. The Sarasota County area median income is about $70,000, which is one of the highest in the state. The rents are approximately 35% below market rents in the city. As stated, it is in the Midway Activity Center, so the more restrictive design standards apply. So it will not look like just boxes. They'll have a lot of architectural features and landscaping to enhance the look of it. The fiscal impact analysis projects a minimal net operating surplus over the first 5 years, gradually increasing over time. And the Planning and Zoning Advisory Board held a public hearing on this on October 3rd, deliberated and voted 5-0 to recommend approval with the staff recommended conditions and the 2 requested waivers. So back to the waivers. Yes, you all know the code needs to be updated, so at times you find conflicts or it's unclear. Does the buffer mean just no buildings, or does it mean a landscape buffer? What our city arborists had recommended, that this would be better than what's actually the type C buffer. Looks nice along fences and along edges of property, but along a waterway, it looks artificial because it's a tree every 40 feet, spaced kind of evenly. What's proposed is that a waterway buffer plan approved by the city arborist that is consistent with the following. All trees, shrubs, and ground cover will be native species naturally found along waterways in Northport. Existing native trees and shrubs along the waterway at the south end of the property, which is the only place that has any really, shall remain intact. Trees and shrubs shall be planted in naturalistic groupings rather than spaced as described in what I was saying earlier, the type C buffer. The buffer will be more densely planted with trees and shrubs than the minimum requirements, resulting in a visual screen from properties across the waterway within 5 years. And the plantings will assist in stabilizing the bank along the Creighton waterway. That's really all I have to add. I mean, it's consistent with, it's an outright allowed use in the zone that it's in. It is consistent with the comp plan. Affordable housing is something that has been an objective for a while. And I don't really have anything further to add.
Okay. Would you have anything that you'd like to rebut on that?
No, sir. Your staff is great.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, now we will move on to public comment before we move on to questioning. I do have a public comment here by Mr. Keith Brown. Yes, sir. You can give him some room there. He'll be using your microphone. Please state your name for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Keith Brown. I'm a resident, not a long way from the proposed development, but I'm certainly in the area. And I really want to propose a question to the developer themselves because I don't really understand the process. I don't really understand how these regulations
Please
direct development.
speaking to the board.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's okay.
It looks like it's going to be beautiful, and I'm sure it is, because it looks like you're taking steps to ensure that we're going further than we need to make it a very attractive structure, which I think is fantastic, in keeping with the design and architectural elements in Northport, which, look at this, pretty sweet. My only concern is that after we have this beautiful new project up and running, and it's housed and and functioning, what's the plan 3-5 years down the road for not only ownership, but management? In other words, is this a property that's going to be developed where the developers then move on, or is someone going to have some skin in the game long-term in Northport so it is maintained and it remains a beautiful place? Or is it a property that will be just flipped out and on to the next project? So that's really the question I proposed to whomever might have an idea. And furthermore, are there any regulations that would codify and ensure that it doesn't, that it is run as it should be, as a really nice property in the long term? Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And maybe one of the commissioners will pose those questions for you. All right, we're going to move on to question. Commissioner Jill Luke, you have 8 minutes.
Could we get that map up again, please? And I will agree with him that code was very difficult to, I was questioning things. That's why I had to go to staff to pull the map out to figure the various things out, because it talks about 40 feet, then it talks about 10 feet. I mean, each of the waivers that you're requesting are talked about in the code in order to implement. So it was very confusing. And you actually have 40 feet of things before you have any kind of building. You have 20 foot of maintenance that we handle, 10 foot of buffering, 10 foot of sidewalk, so that's 40 feet before anything starts. So it was confusing. Looking at this map though, you have one way in and one way out?
There is one access point, Commissioner. However, the access points have the width that the fire department requires to count as 2 access points. Early on in the process, we came to a pre-application meeting, discussed this. In speaking with the fire marshal, this scenario was performed on another project. You have Kennedo Blade, excuse me for the mispronunciation. And this seemed to be an acceptable alternative in their eyes. So that's the direction we went with. Staff had a concern with, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Staff had a concern with a secondary access on to Price and the potential access management concerns with that. Being too close to the intersection for potential future improvements you had, and also being too close to the bridge. So what we tried to do was come up with an access point that was as wide as possible. We'd like to go wider, potentially, but we're going to run into median issues to where the access may be confusing for people that don't actually live there on a regular basis and create potential conflict points. So we felt that this design would be very functional.
I think staff covered that real well with you. Is there going to be a gate? I know you don't have to show one at this point, but is there going to be a gate at any other point in time?
There's none envisioned at this time.
None envisioned, okay. I saw somewhere in the backup the address was being given as a Price Boulevard. Is it really Price or is it Citizen Parkway? Because that's where their drive goes in and out of.
And the county it was assigned an address.
Nicole Galehouse, planning manager. I have been sworn. The address will be assigned based off the access point, which is Citizens Parkway. I believe the property appraiser had an incorrect address in their system.
I think an address had been assigned previously, like earlier on, but it will need to be changed.
Okay, so it will be reading Citizen Parkway, so the residents will be utilizing that. Okay, that is all my questions, sir.
All right, Commissioner McDowell, you have 8 minutes.
Okay, I better hop to it then. So the setback, the waiver A for the buffer in the back, it's going to be 40 feet or 10 feet?
Waiver B?
No, oh, I'm sorry, waiver B.
I just want to be sure, yeah,
Yeah,
because you
sorry.
sounded like that's what you meant. Yeah, so the waiver is, since the code isn't really clear what it's supposed to be, it says 40 in one place, 10 in another. What it is there is still a buffer of no buildings for 40 feet, but there will be a landscape buffer of 10 feet, which would be planted more densely and natural looking than what would normally be required.
So if by chance, and I don't know if this can happen, if we approve a 10-foot buffer, and at some point from approving the DMP to actual construction, and they have a waiver to do just a 10-foot buffer, can they remove this path and just do a 10-foot buffer? Or
Not without
do-
coming back to you.
So,
That would be too big of an amendment to this plan, that they would have to come back and do an amendment and come back through the whole process again.
so they have to, so this little circle cobblestone thing, that's the buffer?
Yes.
And the little tweedy looking thing is the path. So those two things, based on this development, must be carried out or they have to come back.
I would caveat that, say, if, for example, they decided to change the stormwater slightly and change the path slightly, it wouldn't be considered enough to be an amendment. Tell me if, however, the buffer is required, and it's actually a condition of approval. So you can't change something that's a condition of approval without coming back through the same process with PZAB and yourselves.
Is this pathway a condition in the DMP? Can we make it a condition in the DMP?
Well, generally, when it's something like a path or even a driveway because this is more detailed than a lot of DMPs are, as long as it's there and it's in that general location and look, but I mean, that's your prerogative if you'd like to have it stick more clearly like that. It's possible. I mean, we occasionally get changes to the shape of the stormwater system, or they decide to put, a path in a slightly different place, but it's generally the same, like, beginning and end. Maybe it would meander or something, but.
If they were to remove the trail, could they expand the buffer then to 20 feet and keep things even more natural and help reduce some of your required plantings? I mean, because the trail is going to be expensive.
I think, I'd have to, I don't know if you can look it up fast enough. I think a trail is required along waterways.
It is. It's a requirement of
Yeah.
Activity Center 5, which is why we have it there.
Gotcha. Okay.
Commission could waive that requirement and increase the buffer.
So we could waive the trail and increase the buffer to 20 feet natural with all those other little conditions outlined by the arborist.
I think if that's something the commission could do, we would
It's
not
just
be
an
opposed
amenity,
to
but,
it.
For the residents.
I can't see people walking back there.
But it might be a good dog walk, Commissioner.
Well, if they pick up the, okay. So this is an affordable housing complex. Sometimes those affordable housing are for X amount of years and then everything goes to market rate. And I'm wondering, will that be happening with this development?
I'm not sure about the time frame, Commissioner. I'll tell you, to answer the previous, I'll find out right now. To answer the previous gentleman's question, Southport will own these. They own approximately 20,000 units at this point and maintain them, so they're here for the long run. I'm not sure if there's a change to market rate, but I'll find out.
Because that will help influence my vote. I do need to know, when does it get changed to market rate? Okay, that doesn't-
Over time, it gradually changes. It gradually changes from the income restrictions that are in place. There's funding that's used to build the complex. That funding then requires the developer to offer units at an affordable rate that teachers and people that work here, as you know, at some point, the amount, my understanding is the amount of the units that must, or the amount of people that it caters to slowly ends and it becomes market rate over time.
Okay, so over time, 5 years, 2 years, 20 years, 100 years,
50 years.
Okay, so is it like 10%, 20%? And where are we going to be at in 15 years? Is it going to be 50% market? And maybe this gentleman needs to come up and state his name for the record and stuff. Please.
Sure. My name is Scott Seconder with Southport Development.
Were you
I've not been sworn in, so I'd probably need to be
Please
sworn
swear
in.
him in.
I get more time, right, Mayor?
Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you are about to provide is true and accurate to the best of your knowledge, so help you God?
I do. So is your question? Just about in terms of how long it's going to remain
How long is this
affordable?
going to be market rate? And you said 50 years, but you were also talking about a sliding depreciation of
Sure.
market.
Well, there's, different layers of financing on this, so each financing comes with its own sort of restriction that burns off at a certain period of time. Some of the units that are at the really low set-asides, those go away in 15 years. Those go all to go to 100% at 60% AMI. And then Florida Housing, we have a soft loan from Florida Housing on the project as well, and that requires a 50-year extended use agreement. 50, 50. And that's probably the most restrictive of all of the financing. So the tax credits with the project and the bonds, those will burn off in, I think, 30 years, but 50 is the overriding restriction.
Thank you. I have one more question, Mayor, about ingress and egress.
Okay. You
All
got
right.
time.
So this ingress and egress, and I think maybe City Manager, if we could get the fire chief up here, I would be grateful. The Candido Apartments that was mentioned during the staff's report was one ingress and egress was granted because they couldn't go out onto Toledo Blade because of the stormwater retention ponds and stuff like that. But we do not have that issue with this development. And I'm curious, even if we made it a right in, right out over there on Price Boulevard.
Vice Mayor, can I just interject? The
Sure.
fire chief had to respond to an emergency, so he is not present.
Can you repeat the question? I might be able to.
Thank you.
Help.
I hope everything is okay with Chief. Thank you for that information. The Candido Apartments, the reason we couldn't have the secondary ingress and egress at two different locations as per code was because one of those egresses would have been out on Toledo Blade and it would have been all over stormwater and it would have messed up all the stormwater that already exists. So that's why it was approved with the fire department's okay and blessing to have just that one ingress and egress. But this is a totally different development. And I'm wondering how come we can't have a second ingress and egress onto Price Boulevard, even if it is a right in, right out? Not the left turn, but right in, right out.
I'll let Ben from Public Works answer that.
For the record, Ben Newman, Public Works, and I have been sworn. When we were discussing this during the pre-application meeting, where you see their stormwater pond coming up on the left side of abutting Price Boulevard, we have Price Boulevard has a stormwater retention pond there as well for the widening of Price Boulevard. So they cannot use that area for a turn lane off of Price Boulevard into their development. And then it's too close to the waterway for a turn lane to be there as well. And it's too close to the intersection the closer you move to Citizens Parkway. So having an ingress egress on Price Boulevard was deemed to be unreasonable, and we
Okay.
acquiesced to
So
one.
I will politely disagree with everything that you just said, and I know you're the engineer, but I'm looking at this map that's given to us. We have a pond right there that they can use to compensate for that stormwater pond that they're going to be taking a little bit away from. It's only about the same distance from the canal to where that ingress egress would be on Price Boulevard as it is from Citizens Parkway to the ingress egress on Citizens Parkway. It's about the same distance. So when you're saying that this ingress egress on Price is too close to Citizens Parkway, it's almost twice the distance. So I'm not understanding your comment.
Price Boulevard's an arterial roadway with a higher rate of speed, higher volumes of traffic. So when you try to compare it to Citizens Parkway, it's not comparable.
But it has.
I want to move on to Commissioner Emmerich, and we can come back to 3 minutes.
Sounds
But before I do, will you address also the stormwater containment too? Because you have to have a specific amount of capacity also, right? And any one of those, I think, would interfere, whether it's the Price Boulevard distance or whether it's the stormwater, any one of those would interfere with what's being asked, I think.
Their stormwater pond on their site is sized for their site.
Right.
It's not oversized to accommodate Price Boulevard as well.
Okay, Commissioner Emmerich, and then you have 8 minutes for your floor.
Yeah, this is for staff. I know this went to the PZAB and it was approved 5-0. You just didn't give us your staff recommendation at the end of your speech. What's the staff recommendation on these waivers?
Staff unanimously, as far as SDR, recommends approval with the recommended condition of approval, including the waivers that are requested.
Okay, that's all I needed. I didn't think we need to sit up here and redesign this whole picture.
Commissioner McDowell, you have 3 minutes for your follow-up.
My concern with this ingress and egress is based on previous discussions this commission has had with various other developments in our city that have only one ingress and egress. Errors were made in the past, and all we have to do is look at Jockey Club. We don't have to look very far with the other 10 or so developments in our city that have only one ingress and egress because waivers were granted or maybe because the code didn't exist at that time. I don't know. But we have recognized a problem with not having the two ingresses and egresses for the safety of the citizens that live in the development. And I'm trying to correct the past wrongs for the future. And that's why I keep bringing up these second ingress and egresses. There's a code that says there has to be 2 different points for ingress and egress. The one on Citizens Parkway, one of those points is coming in and the other one's going out. They're not large enough for one side to have coming in and going out if the other side is blocked.
So I think it's important to note in this that there's a distinguishing point between a multifamily development and a large residential subdivision. You're talking different issues when you come to ingress and egress for those two things. So I don't want to get into comparisons of things that are not really apples to apples. The plan was reviewed and approved by both Public Works and Fire. The comment I have from Fire is that there are 2 accessible points which meet the basic requirement that has been allowed previously due to circumstances beyond the developer's control. Essentially, they have the ability to shut down, if one of those sides gets shut down, they still have the ability to move traffic in and out of the other side, and that was their primary concern.
So to help alleviate my concern, when you're looking at this ingress and egress, and if you are on the right-hand side, is that right-hand side only room for one vehicle to go through on the right-hand side, or is there enough room for 2 vehicles to kind of make it a 2-way traffic lane? Does that make sense?
I understand her question.
So if you move your arrow down.
I was asking him because here's I could zoom in on this.
It's 20 feet wide on each side. I would say your typical travel lane's at least 10
For a driveway, yeah.
for a driveway. So
What about for a fire truck? Would a fire truck and a car be able to get through that one side?
I'm sure the car would yield to the fire truck if that came to pass.
Thank you, no more.
Okay. Wonderful. All right. So we are going to move on. Do you have any closing arguments?
We'd be happy to add mountable curb to that entrance to help the commissioner's concern.
I like your compromise, thank you.
I think that would help. We're going to have 40 feet of asphalt entering and exiting, so I think In the event of an emergency, when everybody's spilling out, there should be adequate room, but the mountable curb will definitely help. So that way, in the event there is something and somebody needs to get around them, they're not going to be restricted by the development.
Would staff?
Is that your closing argument?
That's it. Yes, sir.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Vice Mayor.
Absolutely. Staff?
Thank you.
Do you have any more?
Would you like us to add mountable curb as a condition? Well, that's
do
it would
we
be
need
your
a-
condition.
Right, do we need a motion for that, city attorney, or just direction in that? Would that be a part of the motion, or?
So as your motion as the board, you have to find through competent substantial evidence whether or not this DMP meets the regulations. And if you want a condition added to that, that would be
That would be
the
a
board's finding.
part of the motion, then?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
May I? Is there anything in the code preventing a mountable curb at ingress or egress?
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So is that the end of your closing argument?
No.
Was there?
Can we get the answer on the
Just
record,
need-
please?
There was a head nod, if you
Oh,
could
yeah.
please respond.
No, there's not.
There's not, oh, thank you. Okay, well, with that, I will close the public hearing, and I will entertain a motion.
I'll move to approve DMP 19-174 with the waivers, 1 and 2, A and B, however you have them labeled. Also including, at the suggestion of the developer, the mountable curbs at the ingress and egress.
Motion on the floor by Commissioner Luke, seconded by Commissioner Enrich. Commissioner Luke, anything to your motion?
No, it looks great, totally understand, appreciate what you're willing to do, so.
Thank you,
very
Commissioner.
much.
Thank you.
Commissioner Enrich? Yes, ma'am.
The motion also needs to mention the other conditions of approval from staff.
Oh, and the waiver,
About
can
the
we do an
buffer.
amendment to that then?
But that's what I did. I approved it with the waivers, 1 and 2 are A and B.
Waivers and conditions. There's waivers and conditions that need
I'll
to be
get it
included in the
amendment,
motion.
that's why I'm.
Commissioner Enrich, did you have something? No, sir. Okay, go ahead.
So, speaking to the motion first, and then I'll make the amendment, I very much appreciate it, because I was going to be a no. Because safety is a very big concern of mine, especially when there's only one access point. And I just hope in the future that the code and staff will really make sure that there are two different points of ingress and egress. There's reasons that that's in the code, and it seems more than lately that that's always been a waiver. So I appreciate the applicant's compromise to that. Mayor, I'll make a motion amendment to include to the main motion all of the conditions stated in the staff report that accompany the waivers 1 and 2.
I'll second that, and I'll apologize that I did not include them. I was thinking I was including them when I said the waivers, so sorry. But I'll
So
second.
I have an amendment on the floor by the Vice Mayor, seconded by Commissioner Luke. Let's call the vote to the amendment. And the motion carries.
Thank you.
Now to the motion as amended.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, guys.
Aye.
She had the
We'll give her one
main
second.
motion up instead of the amendment.
It's all right. You
You're
ready?
doing fine.
Now, this is the main motion as amended.
Thank you.
And the motion carries. Before we move on, I would like to say a quick prayer. One of our daughters of the fire department is involved in a major traffic crash and is being transported to the hospital as a trauma alert. So I'd like to just take a moment, if you guys wouldn't mind. Father, we thank you, Lord God, for all you do. We thank you, Lord, that your hand is in the midst of this situation. We ask that you be with this young girl, you be with the family, and you be with all our citizens and all our children. We love you. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Prayers to you. I hope everything's okay.
Please let us know. All right, we're going to move on.
To Awaken Church.
Yep, to Awaken Church. There we go.
Oh, good. Yeah, it is Awaken.
Ms. Branco, will you please introduce the item?
This is discussion and possible action toward funds from the Special Event Assistant Program to Awaken Church of Northport to cover the cost of city fees and resources associated with their November 9th, November to Remember event. If you have any questions, I can provide an answer. We do have the applicant here as well, and we also have city staff who can answer any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you. Commissioners, we have any questions? Commissioner McGowan, I have your name
I don't know if the applicant would like
on.
to.
Would you like to say something?
Say something and maybe just give a quick
Please-
overview,
please-
plug it, whatever you need to do
Please
for
state
the.
your
Awesome.
name for the record.
Yes, so we
Please
have.
state your name for the
Oh,
record.
yes, I'm Jacqueline Zadravi. I am the pastor's wife of Awaken Church. And we have just been wanting to see a fall festival type event come to the city. So we are attempting to bring the first thing of its kind here. We are going to be doing old-fashioned fall games, a chili contest with local businesses that we have opened it up to local businesses, a pie eating competition, a pie making competition. We're going to have a family concert to end the event, and a lot of other things in between. We would love it if one of you guys would want to come be one of our judges for the chili or the pie competition. And so this is just if you, we would seriously
Absolutely.
love. Okay, I will put you down.
Keep me informed. I eat pie, I eat chili. no-
Yes, we definitely. So this is, and we're going to have a car show as well. So we are just, it's just going to be a free event. We're going to have food trucks. And so we would love for you to consider waiving the fees so that really it's just going to go more into the event to be able to offer more.
And what date is your event?
November the 9th, it's going to take place from 4 to 8 p.m. with the majority of the fall festival type things and games, et cetera, happening from 4 to 6. And then the family concert, which is bringing in an artist that has been a guitar player for many known artists, in the circuit. So.
What were the times again? I'm sorry.
4 to 6 p.m. is the fall games part, and then the family concert from 6 to 8.
That's taking place where at, did you say?
I'm sorry?
And you said it's taking place where at?
The City Green.
It's right here?
Yes.
Yeah. Wonderful. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Make a motion to approve SAP 19-219.
I'll second for discussion.
All right, I have a motion on the floor by Commissioner Luke, seconded by Commissioner McDowell. Commissioner Luke, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, it states in there how much they're requesting, though, even though it was the amount of people that they're expecting, even though this is a first-time event. They put in the amount that they wanted. I think it was $422 and some odd cents or that. So, great idea.
Commissioner McDowell?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate you sharing a little bit for the public about your event. I think it's fantastic, and this is exactly what this fund was set up for. I don't know if city manager needs direction from us to be able to promote it on the city's website and in the city's calendar.
Okay, I will just pass that along to our communications
Do you
team.
need a motion or a consensus?
Well, I know that we already have the community calendar online.
I
and
do
so
know we
those
gave
events-
direction towards
Mhm,
those
we already
being
did
on
that.
the community
But as
calendar.
far as other parts of social media, I really would have to just definitely confirm with Josh on
I
that.
do think too, I think in our discussion, we were trying to.
They're supposed to bring it back.
Well, I think but I think in our discussion, we were going to be very careful about promoting as the city things, but we have a community calendar that everybody could go to and look at, if I remember right.
And these that we're supporting through this are very much so the ones that we would put on that calendar.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure you didn't need our direction to do it.
We already have the community calendar, that would go on there, but I think the mayor spoke to the rest of the social media.
Just making sure.
Yep. All right, let's call the vote. And the motion carries. Thank you, and say hello to Pastor Brian for us.
To have everybody who's going to eat pie have to dump for apples.
I think that is one of the games. So,
Yeah, I saw that. So before they have pie.
No, I
they
like
have
chili
to-
and pie too. You're only giving him the
All right.
opportunities here.
I mean, I will tell Bill Taft's actually running this event for us. So I will tell him to get in touch with you and we will put you up there.
Who is that guy? We don't even know who he is. I hadn't seen him in so long.
I could put a challenge up here, Mayor, that I could possibly out-eat pie, and then you know, if we sat down and we had that eating contest. Just saying.
Wonderful. I will
Thank you.
so much.
Thank you very much.
Sounds good to me. Watch the boys.
All right, wonderful. So now we're going to move on to Northport Aquatic Center initial operating hours. Ms. Branco, will you please introduce this item?
Yes, Mayor. This is for discussion and possible action regarding Northport Aquatic Center initial operating hours. We have staff present to answer any questions. Cindy Funheller, Director of Parks and Recreation, Tricia Wisner, Assistant Parks and Recs, Assistant Director. Thank you.
Good evening.
All right, yes, ma'am.
Sandy Funheller, Director of Parks and Recreation. So since this memo was sent out back on October 3rd, the amended operating hours have already been put into place. And we also reported on the lifeguard recruitment efforts. That was the second part of the request. So at this point, staff's intent is to move forward with the amended operating hours as already advertised. We would go back to the regularly planned off-season hours on November 4th, and then resume the full facility operations in the spring. So if there's any questions or comments on that, we can answer those.
Could I have you maybe give a little insight into attendance before we get into this, just for the record and for people to understand? Because there's been a lot of disinformation out there that we had nobody showing up.
Sure. I'm going to let Assistant Director Wisner address that.
Yesterday we had 115 people show up, and today it was 105 when I left there at about 5 o'clock this afternoon.
Sorry, how many today?
105 when I left there around 5
By the
o'clock
time you left.
this afternoon.
Wonderful. Great, thank you. 2 days in? Thank you. Okay, Commissioner McDowell.
Yeah, so this is more for public consumption. What is the capacity of the pool?
Okay, I was going to ask
So
that.
capacity of the pool is 632, and that's broken down by the competition pool at 320, the lazy river at 250, and then the zero entry spray ground at 62.
So if you have 65 people at the little kiddie area, you're making 3 of them move? How?
In general, it's seen as an overall capacity of the 632. If lifeguards see that there's too many people in a certain amenity, they would have to close it off for safety purposes.
Gotcha. All right, so then let's move on to liquidated damages. There is a provision in the construction contract for liquidated damages. Can you tell me what date that started?
I cannot give you a specific date. The contract does call for liquidated damages of $1,000 a day. However, that's dependent on several factors. So based on the approved change orders that we have to date, and then there's a 15-day permitting delay that we've noted on several documents, that date would be September 13th. However, the project is not complete. So until the project is complete, all the change orders are in, we don't have that date. It is very possible that additional change orders will be brought forward. We know that there's been some discussion about some for weather from the Hurricane Irma. Was it Irma? Yes, right?
Dorian.
Dorian, no.
Dorian, sorry.
The recent one. And then there's also some change orders that may come through for the Department of Health, because there were some things that we had to do for the Department of Health in order to open. So we don't know if that has a time and material impact, and until we get that change order, we don't know what that date is. It'll change if a change order is approved.
Gotcha. So since the pool was approved with surtax dollars, could we use whatever liquidated damages there could be based on that date. Could we use that to possibly keep the pool open, to staff it, to fund it for the staffing for maybe more weekends, maybe an extended holiday times? Could we use that funding for that, or does it have to go back into surtax because it was paid for with surtax?
Vice Mayor, it does not have to go back into surtax. It's a great question. It can actually go back in the general fund. We would look at that as appropriate because of the delay of the pool being open. And so we had lost revenue because of that. So we would put that right back in the general fund. And then, of course, it would be up to the commission or staff to decide if they were going to spend that money on special hours or day free or whatever that might look like.
How long do you think it'll take? Obviously, it's still a construction site because they haven't reached that point where they're done. They haven't turned it over to the city yet, to my knowledge. Have they?
There's still a punch list, so.
Okay, so it's still their responsibility, not the city's at this point.
There's an overlapping responsibility at this point. We are taking care of the facility, the water, we're balancing and adding chemicals. So we have taken the majority of the facility, but we are working through a punch list. So we're not at a complete construction project yet.
Okay. Maybe we could get a memo once you guys have all the change orders tabulated and the liquidated damages. So maybe a memo or update can be sent to us commissioners, so that way then we know that part of it. I don't know if you need a consensus, Mayor, for that.
Well, you have asked you've asked for us to provide biweekly updates. So until the project is complete, we would intend on providing those.
That'll be included.
That's all I've got. Thank you very much for all that information. I'm sure the public will appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Luke, would you?
The occupancy of 632, is that inside the fenced area?
That's actually associated with the actual vessels of water. It's the guidelines for inside the fenced area.
Okay, so you could have more people in the concession area and stuff like that too? Okay.
Yes.
I heard a rumor today that somebody has stated that it's supposed to be free swimming on November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. And it's being passed around, I hear, on social media.
Even used a graphic and put a
Yes.
fancy little tag on
Enter
there.
through it.
Yeah, not good, not healthy. Could you tell us if that is so or not, please?
That was not something that was generated by the city of Northport. That was an individual that took the flyer that we had for the grand opening and applied their own graphics saying that it would be free on November 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. We did alert our communications team. I believe they reached out to the administrator of that page and asked that it be removed to avoid any further confusion with the public.
I think it's important to understand that we created those graphics, right? So that could be considered our intellectual property.
Yes, Mayor, that's correct.
Thank you.
All right, just thank you. I do know I had mentioned earlier about the water polo people. When does their sponsorship get to go up?
So what was received from Water Polo was an application for sponsorship. There's a request to be invoiced, so we have invoiced them at this point. The sponsorship will not start until we've received that money. Once we receive it, then we would work with them on what will go up on the scoreboard sign, whether it's a logo or name, whatever, and then also all the additional benefits that come with that sponsorship. So we will work with them.
Okay.
Once it's up there, that's when the sponsorship would start for the year.
Okay. I heard a check was cut, so I was just making sure.
In the mail.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Commissioner Image?
Yeah, we had an awesome time at the soft opening. My kids, my grandkids, we couldn't get my granddaughter out of there, you know. She just loved it. I think it's a phenomenal facility. You guys did an excellent job. We've had
Thank
our
you.
ups and downs, but I think we've come through it. We're going forward, and you guys are amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. And I think moving forward, I don't think if we don't do anything, you're just going to continue with the process that has already been established, correct? So there's no real decision that needs to be made unless we want to change that decision, correct?
Correct, Mayor.
Okay, so.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, ma'am.
Is it possible to keep it open for a few more weekends, not during the week after this 2 weeks? Is it possible to keep it open on the weekends, the aquatics, the recreational side?
We do not have the staff hours to be able to do that. It's not necessary that we don't have enough lifeguards. We have enough lifeguards for the hours that we had intended to have for the off-season. For this amended 2-week period, we've had to pull in our aquatic supervisor, our assistant aquatic supervisor, our pool technician, and our head lifeguard to take on-deck lifeguard positions in order to fill all of that for the full facility to be open. So there's just such a difference between what the competition pool requires as far as number of hours and the full facility. So we would not be able to do that. We would have to hire additional staff. They would not get through the hiring process fast enough to accommodate that. Something we could do in the future, but then they're not going to be guaranteed the number of hours necessarily that they're looking for with that kind of schedule.
Thank you very much.
And I would like to say too, that every one of those folks have been so gracious. They've been so excited about this. They've actually wanted to be there doing this. And it's been, I mean, people that aren't supposed to be doing those jobs are like, I'm here doing the job, woo. You know, they've been that excited about it. And it's just been phenomenal to see. All you guys did a phenomenal job. But just to see the staff that you guys hired. Oh my God, I mean, where did you find these folks? They're so amazing. They truly are.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you.
Oh, yeah. So, all right, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I saw a comment from a parent who said, I wish so bad you had this when my child was younger, but I just want you to know that he's over there as a lifeguard taking care of the children now.
I love that. That is awesome. That is awesome. All right. I do not believe I have any public comment. Nope. So we'll move on to commission communications. Commissioner Luke.
There's several things, but they should be quick. I've been to several ribbon cuttings. The city is growing with companies, and it's wonderful to see that. I attended Kona with a couple of our staff members from Public Works, and oh my, is our staff really respected within the county. Elizabeth Wong and Jerry Traverso were on a panel, and the respect that is given to them is just humbling. Attended the community yard sale, huge hit. Attended the board of the EDC that I'm assigned to. That meeting was primarily discussions about the incentives that Commissioner Hines was talking about that's coming up at their retreat on December 13th. I attended Girls Inc., who won a grant, and what a wonderful organization that is. It's very much like Boys and Girls Club, but it's just all the girls. Attended the White Cane Walk. That was very, I started to say eye-opening, but I should have kept my mouth shut. But I mean, my great-grandmother was blind. My mother has macular degeneration, so it was a personal thing that I was going through, being blindfolded, walking with these folks, and how your other senses come into play while you're like that. Toured the Northport. They addressed it in public comment. It was outstanding again. I've been to 3 showings lately, and again, public comment talked about choices and chances. I've also seen Screenagers, The Next Chapter, and Surviving Lunch. And the bullying that is going on, that's causing a lot of the depression among the kids, is just incredible. I mean, I talked to one of our developers in the city today, and his child received a concussion from being struck by a book during a meeting. It's just horrible what bullying does. And it's not just with the kids, it's with adults. We see it all over Facebook where people want to bully, and the unhealthiness of mentality and personalities is really lacking within our society. I attended the Conservation Foundation annual event. They've been around for 16 years, and it was great to be able to be with like-minded people. And then last night was Celebrate the Arts, and that was for the Alliance, the Arts Alliance and Culture, and it's part of what the tourist development that I sit on, what their money goes to, we oversee that. And it was one of the recipients of grants was our corral here in Northport. So congratulations to them. That's it.
Mr. McDowell?
So I attended the White Cane event, and I have to tell you, the things that I've learned that not only do we take for granted every single day because we're sighted, but the technologies that are available to them that are not sighted is absolutely amazing. I learned so much from that event. Just walking blindfolded for, 15, 20 minutes was extremely powerful. City Manager, I know we gave direction for someone to get back to us regarding Sumter and Toledo Blade, the trees. Some of them just need to be pulled out. The ones that are already pulled out need to either be replaced or sodded over. I don't know what's going on, but it's looking sad. And I know that at some point soon they're going to be going into dormant stage. Right now you can tell which ones are definitely dead. So can we find out what's happening, please, sooner rather than later about Toledo Blade and Sumter? If you could get us a memo, figure out a way, what the next steps are, how this is going to be resolved. I'm getting a lot of complaints about it, and it's stuff that we've been asking for. So
Yes, Vice Mayor.
that's all I've got right now.
Okay.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
Mr. Image?
Nothing.
Good. Ms. Branco?
Yes, Mayor, thank you. Just wanted to remind the commissioners that we've added a solid waste district meeting to the November 12th meeting date to be held at noon. And in addition, I'd also like to provide some good news
I
for,
thought it was 9.
It's 9.
It's 9 a.m. because the meeting's at 10.
okay, is it at 9? Okay.
Yes,
we're at
ma'am.
noon. Was it at
Yeah, it's at 9.
Mine said noon too.
Yeah, November
It's 9.
12?
Mine says 9.
Originally, he said noon, and he wasn't aware of the regular meeting starting at 10, so he changed it to 9.
Okay.
Oh, did not get that latest communication, apologize.
Okay.
Here we go.
So 9 a.m.?
9 a.m.
All right, and also just to provide some great news from Commissioner Carson, she's in Washington DC right now. She is representing the Northport in the Minnesota League. She is also lobbying on our behalf for infrastructure funding, fiber internet expansion, and much, much more. She recently had a meeting with White House directors, and she found it incredibly important. And not only that, but she's going to be able to bring back some amazing funding opportunities for a lot of our projects. So
Oh, wow.
wanted to provide that
Fantastic.
update.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Slayton? Ms. Reed, do you have anything?
We do not.
Okay. Well, and I appreciate it. With that, we're adjourned. Oh, stoic over there.